Hello, everyone. I know it's been a while, but needless to say, things have been rather busy for me. First off, I've been involved in some job searching, so that's been occupying a great deal of my time. And back in December last year, I had to put that off as well because I was involved with the International Conference for Men's Issues, or ICMI 21. I was the co-host on the North American wing and got to interview and host the Q&As of several guests. And through the holidays and New Year's, I've been basically giving myself a break. And up until now, I've been involved writing material for Voice for Men. And right now, I just want to get back into the swing of things with the video making. Again, I know it's been forever, but hopefully we'll get something more consistently out for the coming future. I've also contemplated starting a new YouTube channel in the near future to showcase music on YouTube and other video channels as well. Another idea I have is to start a YouTube channel in which I review shows, movies, visual media, music albums, that sort of thing. That's kind of separate from this V for Vernon channel in which I'm more philosophic about men's issues, liberty, and what have you. Please let me know in the comments section on wherever you're viewing this if that's something you'd be excited to see. So for 2022, I want to lay out some of my plans and my vision for it. I want to start driving the idea of intact body, intact spirit in my advocacy for men's issues. I want to push harder on my anti-self-sacrifice narrative on men's issues for sure, especially considering that increasingly the idea of self-sacrifice becomes popular within and without the men's issues sphere. I've seen nothing less than a consistent, if not increasing, demand for the very idea of self-sacrifice and male expendability. And I want to formulate a better way to detect that, whether somebody realizes they're doing this or not. These people consistently seem to want to see men sacrifice towards societal ends, which are usually gynocentric ends anyway. Instead, I want to extol the sort of man that wants to keep himself intact physically, say from things like genital mutilation and, against the male disposability norm, and keeps his soul intact by living his own life as a man on his own terms, while embracing self-ownership and not selling their soul to another's ends. Speaking of keeping men physically intact, in terms of my intactivism, I want to increase that perspective on the normalcy, the dignity, and the natural quality of male genitalia in the American consciousness. Those who are anti-MGM in North America are rightly so because they have been victimized during their infancy. I myself have not been victimized in this way, and I want to add my voice as an intact American and speak on behalf of them and encourage more intact intactivists in North America. The culture in North America is that of a consistently shaming mindset towards intact men and boys, and too many who engage in neonatal cutting cite the fear that their sons will be subject to ridicule and ostracism for being intact. I believe that the effort to instill normalcy of the intact male genital in the American consciousness will be an important stepping stone in ending MGM once and for all and the circumcision status quo in this country. It is my understanding that too many who are intact are often pressured into getting it cut because some woman says that it looks better if it's cut, and then they get it done and oftentimes they'd end up regretting it. All this being a result of a combination of gynocentrism, which MGM would not be without, and just the sense that the intact genitalia is not normal. This needs to change. And also to challenge the idea that this is a non-issue for men. It very much is a serious rights issue for men and boys. Unfortunately, it's come to my understanding that there are even Europeans out there where Europe, where circumcision is not in any way the norm, they see it as a non-issue for men. This is a bit flummoxing for me. So maybe the idea of normalcy is more urgent because it is not the United States only that the normalcy of the male genitalia should be taken seriously. But yeah, this is the part of the vision I have for 2022. So as I've already mentioned, this year I want to increase my writing output and my video output. And I'm still working on that book about my own take on men's issues, which is defining men's issues advocacy by making the case for man's whole spirit instead of his mitigated and self-sacrificial existence that too many on both sides of the socio-political spectrum seem to see no problem with, if not downright advocate for. I'll be diligent with this to the capacity that I can, especially considering all that's going on in my life. And I would like to ask my viewers, those who like my material, to come support me in my Subscribestar account. There's going to be a few changes in the works. Try and make some of the tiers more economical for people, especially in this kind of bad shambles economy. Every bit helps, even the $1 tier. And I'll include the Subscribestar link on the description below also. So anyway, I intended to do a Q&A on the tail end of last year, but I just got too busy and tired, and then there was the ICMI and everything. Everything was occupying my time, so I had to kind of push it all the way up until now, which is like mid-February of 2022. So here it is now. I want to thank everyone who went through the trouble to send me some questions and dig up something that they were curious about me. Sorry for the wait. I will answer them right now. All right, so I'm going to get two anonymous questions out of the way first. Okay, the first one. What is the purpose and value of the MGTOW philosophy? The philosophy of a man going his own way is basically the essence of a male's self-ownership, self-actualization, self-determination, and independence. Independence of an individual has long been maligned throughout history by those that try to impose rule and control an individual's life, be it a certain tyrant or a collective group of practicing tyrants, or whether it's society itself by rule of the masses and bromides such as the greater good and the social contract and what have you. In particular, a man's self-ownership has been maligned due to the fact that men have this expectation posed on them for dying in service of nation or state, or being designated protector and provider of what really amount to women at the expense of self, and otherwise be in service of gynocentric society, lest he be deemed less of a man. MGTOW basically is synonymous with self-ownership then, but with that extra added emphasis, that extra focus on him actually being a man, being a male, in light of the fact that men are metaphysically caught in a catch-22 in which his rights and his very being, symbolically and physically as a man, is being attacked, and then what happens is that men become mocked for assuming that they have any rights violations at all, that they have any issues at all, at least none that are not caused by the patriarchy. So the purpose and value of MGTOW is that it is the philosophy of men's self-actualization. Second anonymous question. What is the difference, if anything, between a MGTOW and a Zeta male? I'd say that the Zeta male is a subset of MGTOW, but more to the point, it is close to synonymous with MGTOW, or at least any meaningful definition of MGTOW in which the self-actualization part is emphasized, that it's serious about men's right to exist on their own terms. It is worth admitting that practitioners of MGTOW do exist that emphasize the complete avoidance of women instead of facing them and involving them bravely in their lives and holding them accountable as individuals. This former type of MGTOW appears to me to be prone to cynicism, which is nothing to actually be proud of. And I think the best expression of MGTOW is that which looks forward in an optimism that is not ignorant of the actual dangers of gynocentric society. The Zeta male then is, in my mind, a more consistent approach to MGTOW that is more close to the spirit of MGTOW, in which this self-actualization is coupled with its unabashed practice on Earth. The adopting and identification of a Zeta male is something I see as adding some more value, because it serves as an actual true alternative to the alpha, beta, omega false hierarchy, as I see it. A false hierarchy for men that operates by and towards gynocentrism anyway. So the Zeta male is the MGTOW man refined and refactored. Peter Wright asks, I know you have an interest in objectivist philosophy. Can you briefly outline objectivism in your own words? Also, have you noticed whether writers on the topic talk about gendered issues, or do they generally like to approach things from a more neutral human perspective? Thanks for the question, Peter. I would say that objectivism is best summed up by the motto or the pledge in Galt's Gulch in the book Atlas Shrugged. I swear by my life and my love of it that I will not live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine. What is meant by this is that a man lives on his own terms with the just constraint that no other man become subordinate or sacrificed to his own ends. And the same is true for the reverse, that he will not live as a mean to another's end. Objectivism, in my mind, is the first and currently only actual mindset in which the self is not seen as worthless just because it doesn't serve another's end, be it a giant mass, a monolith, or some other person in particular. So it's the opposite of subordination to the state or a collective or the whim of the masses. As far as whether writers on the subject talk about gendered issues or not, well, it's not something I've noticed in abundance the little I've read, but suffice to say, I'm pretty sure it's kept basically gender neutral. It takes the idea of man, but really is referring to humankind altogether, of course. I sense that objectivism in theory holds males, actual men, as it holds them in high esteem because of the wonderful things man does and creates in Earth and in history. Yes, I do believe that objectivism holds man in high regard for being a great creator and a great achiever. With regards to women, again, I think objectivism holds them as individuals who are capable of exercising individualism and also accountability. I genuinely can't tell you whether objectivist writers of today are consistent about that at all. I mean, it could go either which way in terms of error, in my opinion. Since I haven't heard objectivists address gynocentrism directly, it's reasonable to assume that some of them might have some kind of gynocentric bias that they might not even be necessarily aware of. Don't take my word for that, but since they haven't addressed gynocentrism, it's possible they aren't aware of its collectivistic danger necessarily. If I do get around to reading more in terms of today's objectivist writings, then, well, there'll be something for me to report on, I suppose. This one's from Greta Aurora. I agree with you that men shouldn't just be celebrated and honored for their sacrifices, and we should encourage individual men to express themselves in their own unique ways. However, do you see a role for sacrifice in the lives of people? Personally, I believe our ability to delay gratification and make sacrifices to create a better future for ourselves and others is an important aspect of what makes us human. Thanks for the question there. So to address this idea of sacrifice, people especially nowadays seem to define sacrifice in terms of a trade. That relates to statements about the delayed gratification and the making a better future for self and others thing, right? You know, it's kind of presented as this kind of trade, which I'll get right into. So in this case, sacrifice, since we're using the word sacrifice here, it becomes defined as getting rid of something small or worthless for something bigger and better. I think this is a very wrong way to look at sacrifice. Instead, I define sacrifice as not giving up something of lesser value, but something of tremendous value. Sacrifice is giving away your most precious thing because it is your most precious thing. The virtue is implied here on the fact that you're giving something away. Ever notice in a lot of love stories that some guy would, often on their knees, offer something that they value the most among their possessions to gain a woman's favor and return of affection? I would say that is more close to an actual sacrifice, and it's clearly not dignified. Another idea that I think gives this more backing is the idea of, again, we're kind of coming back to MGM here. The idea is that you're sacrificing that flesh supposedly for some kind of greater long-term benefit. Now, of course, the long-term benefit turns out to be not that at all. In fact, the foreskin is a very vital part of the male genitalia, as we know. So yes, it is a sacrifice in the worst way possible, but too many who advocate it seem to say that it is a just sacrifice because you're getting rid of something that is really just a flap of skin. It is not just a flap of skin, of course. That's their miserable error. But this is how they kind of define sacrifice, as just kind of this trade. And I've already said that it's not. I don't think that it is a trade at all. One question I like to ask about sacrifice to those who think it's such a fantastic idea is that, who takes it and why is it a good thing that they're taking it? The sacrifice, I mean, this thing that they've sacrificed. I think this idea of virtue bestowed upon the broken because they've committed the sacrifice, this broken creature, this kind of gratitude and virtue and esteem, I think that is the prospect of that is horrifying to me. It should be a subject of terror. In my opinion, the world has had a long enough history of disposing people and romanticizing that aspect, that expendability, that the fact that they've ruined themselves in sacrifice for someone else's end. Then when they see somebody physically intact, they would deem him as useless or worthless or someone who has not done their duty to society or whatever. Now, with regard to delaying gratification, I don't like that phrase so much. I prefer cultivating gratification instead. Because time and patience put into something and some effort put into something as it kind of blossoms and grows, that's more of a wonderful trade rather than a sacrifice in my mind. Making a better future for yourself and others, assuming that the others are those you value, that too is not a sacrifice. However, deeming one's own life as only worth expending for the sake of others' lives, yes, that's a sacrifice, and I don't personally approve of it. I think it's actually a very toxic way to look at human life, actually. By the way, speaking of what makes us human, I think the thing that makes us brilliantly human is our ability to say that they have a right to exist on their own terms. I think that's one of the things that make the very idea of liberty so wonderful. Because liberty entails a man living on his own terms, an individual living on his own terms. Having one's existence solely devoted to another's end is something I would describe as inhuman. Again, thanks for the question. I hope I came across in a understandable way here. Chris Vody asks, what is more important, feeling happy or being right? So both states of being, the way they're said, are kind of vague to me. So I don't know if I can answer this thing directly or simply. To me, happiness is something that transpires from having one's values reflected in the world through their consistent actions. This is, of course, different from the popular definition of happiness, which is just a transitory elation. Then there's the difference between being right, as in actually attaining a truth regardless of one's feelings, or the being right, as in someone has to always win arguments and someone has to always be following them, be on their side, that kind of thing. So if I took the former definitions of each of those, I think that being right wins out slightly, because in the pursuit of truth, we're bound to come up with something that doesn't really gel with our values. But the importance, the value therein lies in actually pursuing that truth and knowing what to do with it. When you attain a truth, you attain the know-how to, or at least hopefully you will attain the know-how, you'll be on the right path to deal with it in a consistence with your values, which can lead you along to happiness. The last two questions come from my friend, username Batman. How did you end up finding out about men's rights issues and or specifically MGM? How did you become an MRA activist in that sense, if you call yourself those, of course, which I do. So yeah, thanks for that, Batman. I've immersed myself in the men's issues sphere more directly and consistently after becoming disillusioned with the intellectual dark web, which can't let go of its own brand of gynocentrism and male disposability and like their so-called advocacy for men being on those bases. So it really started, I guess this is true with most people, by the way, with Karen Straughn's videos and listening to Honey Badger Radio. Paul Elam's videos really struck me because it was the first time that I've heard that male self-actualization was given the importance it deserved. in contrast to what the intellectual dark web may saying about the whole elective male disposable societal norms. Now about the MGM bit. I was against MGM sometime before all this, for sure. The first time I learned about the horrors of it was watching the Penn and Teller's bullshit episode on circumcision. And as I already mentioned in this video, I wanted to try and add more of the intact American male voice to join with the victims of infant MGM to fight against the normalcy of the mutilated genitalia in male genitalia in society, and to promote the normalcy of the one that is perfectly intact. And the second question is a simple one. How old are you? I'm 32. Thanks for asking. Alright, that's it for the questions, and that's it for my video to start off this year all the way in February. Hope you've enjoyed it, and send some more questions if you like, because I like answering them. I'd like to do more videos like this. Wish me luck in all my endeavors this year, and hopefully we'll see if this year turns out to be a good one. Thanks, guys.